start button. They changed it again, so hopefully we're live.
You are alive.
All right, we are live. Hey guys, it's Stone Guy 223. Appreciate everybody tuning in tonight, and we'll get from introductions from my left. We've got Moon Food.
What's up?
What's up? What's up? And we've got PBR,
How's it going?
and we've got Mr. Smedgy.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, brother. Good. Appreciate you tuning in. And there's hopefully other people will roll in. This is weird. It's not posting on my channel until I go live, from what people tell me, and then the links are, I don't know. It's just weird, man. So it is what it is. I should probably start these way earlier to give time for everything to go through, but I'm a slacker. Started it 10 minutes ago. So anyway, how it's done. How it's done. That's the title that I came up with tonight. I want to talk about a couple different topics, and maybe answer some questions on how it's done now, and maybe how it should be done, or why it's done that way. And first thing to kind of start it off with, because I don't want to spend too much time, is this lady, the city clerk, who's refusing to give marriage licenses out. Now, why this is national news is beyond me.
Because she's a hypocrite?
Have you guys heard this story?
Yeah. It's that freaking gross-looking, pasty... I'm not gonna be nice at all, man. Fuck that lady.
So here's my question with that. We all know that recently a law was passed. Well, several months ago, maybe even a year ago now, the federal law was passed to recognize same-sex marriages. And then just within the last month or two, that there was some other law that was passed that made the states recognize it, where each individual state didn't have to be tasked with taking something to court, like taking it to their state Supreme Court or whatever it was like. I don't know how that works, but basically all states have to recognize same-sex marriage as well. Not that they could have superseded the federal statute initially, but whatever. Now all states have to recognize it. So there's a lady, and I mean, what's her position? She's just a county clerk?
Yeah, elected also. She's an elected official.
Okay, so she's an elected official. She works in the, I guess, like I said, the county clerk's office. She's tasked with issuing licenses, marriage licenses. Here in my state, you get your marriage license and your carry permit at the same place. That's kind of ironic, but
Sounds dangerous.
So anyway, here's my thing. If the states are required to recognize same-sex marriage, how can this lady refuse to issue them? And why is it making national headlines? Why don't they just fire this bitch and put someone in there that's going to do their job?
As of today, she's going to jail.
Whoa, are you serious?
Yeah.
Now, how could she go to jail?
Because she's the judge told her, basically it came down to a judge telling her to do it, and she still refused. Now she's in contempt of court.
Oh, okay, I see.
Here's why I don't have a problem with anybody's religion. But there is a separation for church between church and state in this country for a very good reason. You can, it's a loose separation, but it's still a separation. And what she's doing is blurring that damn line, and that line is there for a reason. And the courts, the law was passed, the courts said to do it, and she's still denying. So she is basically throwing out everything just because of her religious conviction. And
right.
More power to her conviction, but I'm sorry, it's your job. And in case you didn't know when you took that job, the church and state has always been there. That separation's
Right.
always been there.
Well,
So
that's just the thing, and I agree 100% with you on that. As far as I firmly believe that the government in general, shouldn't have any say so on what you choose to do or not
yeah,
to do.
I don't
I
have to
just think it's asinine that we have to have a piece of paper.
somebody
You
may
know.
not like the fact that I own an AR-15, and I may not like the fact that that dude wants to marry that dude, but
Right,
not up
exactly.
that,
But
that's
it would be
mine.
hypocritical
Yeah,
for us to, you know what I'm saying, for us to be like, well, I want my guns, but you can't suck a dick. It's
yeah.
like,
And the other ironic thing about this whole situation is she's been married 4 flipping times.
Mm.
well,
Married and divorced.
and
Four
besides
times.
that, the thing I just don't understand is if if I was to if I was to choose not to do my job, you know, for what let's say, you know, whatever my job is, and I told my boss, hey, I'm not going to do that. Well, I think it's a pretty cut and dry scenario of, well, okay, you're fired. I'll
I don't
hire someone else
I
to
don't
come
think
in
you
here
can
and do the
fire.
job.
I don't think you can really fire like easily an elected official. You know what I mean? Like they have to be dismissed, or I don't know how it works. Okay,
Oh,
but
is that so? That's the difference.
yeah, she's got to be like basically. I don't know. I don't know how they can't just fire her. That's I guess what I understood. I could be wrong.
I gotcha. See, I haven't paid much attention to it, so that I was kind of halfway wanting to become a little more familiar through this chat of what exactly the situation was, because it just, in passing, every time I turn on the news, this is on the headlines, and I'm like, what? And I kind of watch it for a second, and then I flip it off because it's like frustrating. I just don't understand why they're making such a big deal out of it. Fucking get the bitch out of there and get someone in there that's gonna do what the state's required to do.
Yeah, and I mean she's not the only one that doesn't like it, but she's the only one that's refusing. And I think that's why she's making headlines because other people are like, well, I don't like it, but it's the law. It's the law of the land. It always has been, so I have to do it. And but
Right.
she's the only person that is just like, fuck it
Well,
all, you know?
what kills me is these religious zealots that you know, and I'm not a very religious person. I was raised Catholic, but I'm not a practicing Catholic. I'm not. I couldn't quote you freaking Bible verses. But from my understanding, there was homosexuality going on in biblical times. In the Bible, there's references of homosexuality, and so it just seems ironic that they use religion as their platform to stand and demonize any homosexual. When I don't know, it's just I think it's a security blanket for these people to use, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, we're all human. You do what you want to do. I might not prefer that lifestyle, but who am I to tell someone else they shouldn't be able to do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
It just that it's like the fucking least of our worries in this world. We've got way more important shit to be worried about than who wants to suck whose dick. You know what I mean? It's stupid.
well, obviously, like, obviously this, we live in times where everyone wants to tell everybody what they should and should not be doing. As I mean, our constant vigil against our, to protect our Second Amendment rights is a good example, but it's not just us. It's people who want, trying to get marriage, equality, trying to be, I mean, all they're trying to do is be miserable with the rest of us. So, I mean, more power to them.
Yeah, no shit. Like, what? Fuck. Why would you want to be married?
But regardless, if somebody's treated, you treat somebody different and tell them they can't do something. I mean, that's A, it's not fair, and B, you're just gonna make people want to do it more. No, I think when it boils down to it, I think she's not doing her job, and she's a freaking hypocrite. She's trying to defend the sanctity of marriage, yet she's been married four times. Four. That's insane to me. Once is enough,
And she cheated on the last guy she was married to, I think.
No, she's a hypocrite through and through. I mean,
Right.
and she looks like a sister wife. I mean, sorry to all you Mormons out there. I'm not knocking on you guys, but fuck, man. She's got so much forehead.
Like the Mormons.
Yeah, sorry. She's got a lot of forehead going on there. She's got some serious receding hairline. Anyway, moving on.
Lord. Nice, Medj. What were you about to say?
Oh, well, originally I was just gonna say I saw an article where the title of it was, gay marriage is ruining the sanctity of her four marriages. Pretty much what you just brought up.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, so I wish our media wouldn't spend so much time on things that don't really matter, especially when there's so much going on in this world. And again, who cares? It's not. I don't think it's the government's place to tell anybody what to do, and especially to basically give someone permission to do what they feel is natural. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about whether or not people are saying they're born that way or if they don't have a choice. Not that kind of natural. I'm talking, if someone's comfortable being with a man, then hey, whatever. Why should we, regulate or mandate or give them permission to do what they want to do? It just doesn't make sense. So anyway, I didn't want to spend too much time on that. I just thought that was. I'd hoped you guys had heard about the story, but no, I had no idea she was actually going to jail for.
Yeah, she's a hot.
being in
Wow.
contempt.
I want to use the term hot mess, but there's nothing hot, so she's just.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yep, that's it's not quite as well. It's definitely not as bad. But this the other thing I wanted to talk about was this the Westboro Baptist Church.
Fuck.
These motherfuckers. Now, I don't know, man. It's there again. It would be hypocritical for me to say I want my rights, and then tell these people they can't have their rights. But I don't know, man. There's a line that I think you. I just don't think you could. I just don't think you should cross that line, man. There's one thing to speak up and exercise your rights, and there's a whole nother aspect of what these people are doing that I think is just way crossing that fucking line.
Well, that's because most people respect each other and don't want to.
Right.
Honestly, like if they're not hurting anybody and they're not perpetrating violence or preaching violence, then let them do it. But honestly, I don't think the police should be protecting them, though. I think the cops basically have to stop them from getting fucking beat.
Well, and that's the other ironic thing when when they're going to officers who were killed, they're going to their funeral, and soldiers that died, giving them the freedoms that they enjoy, that they're exercising, and they fucking go to their funeral and protest while that family's grieving. I think that's crossing the line, dude. That's a fucking level of ignorance and downright just dirty. That's just fucking dirty. That's just something you don't do.
Well,
Well,
it's
it's
despicable, isn't it? Hi, Stone.
it,
Thanks for the
Hey, Mule, what's up, brother?
Thanks for the invite. I was able to jump
Absolutely.
in once I got home, and I watched
Yeah,
a
man.
little bit before I jumped in. And I'm going to let Smeggy finish his thought before I go ahead, Smeg.
all right. Thanks, man. I was just gonna say that it's definitely an asshole move of what they're doing, but that's the reason we have the First Amendment is to protect unpopular speech. You don't need to be protected if you're the minority saying what everyone else agrees with. It's there to protect assholes like that, honestly, and we all have the right to call them assholes.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
let them do it. But I just wish the cops would be like, all right, we're gonna go take a lunch break. Have at it.
Right, but in thinking that, and I think the same thing, we're acting on our feelings rather than the logic that you guys have been talking the whole night, right?
Well,
No matter what this chick, her personal feelings are, right, her religious beliefs are, the law is the law. If you don't like it, you step out. You go, okay, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to sign these things, so I quit. You know, I think the judge did the right thing, putting her in jail.
no, I think the Westboro whatever fucks should be allowed to do what they do. But we had a funeral here recently for a soldier that died, and I forgot how many thousands of people showed up, and like that veterans motorcycle group showed up, and a bunch of soldiers came down from Fort Lewis and basically made a human wall in between them and the family that was like thousands and thousands. There were more people there to just block the Westboro Baptist Church from the family, not block them like violently, just make a
Right,
human
right.
shield.
And
Then,
see,
then we're there for the funeral. I mean, they were there for the funeral, but you know what I mean.
but see, that's the beauty of it, right? That's America. That's how America's supposed to fucking work, right?
Yeah.
Is we the people stood up and said, "Wow, you have the right to say this shittiest thing to the people at the time of their grief. We're not going to let them see you because we're going to show our hand of support."
Yeah.
And all it would take would be one jerk, right, on either side getting violent, right, to screw it all up. That's why the cops, that thin blue wall is there, right? They're there between the stupid and the people. You know what I mean?
They're not a wealthy organization. You know, they don't have that many members, believe it or not. I watched a documentary about them, and it's pretty pathetic when it comes down to it.
Well, it's one family, isn't it? Isn't
Yeah,
it like one family?
If you've ever seen that movie Red State,
Nah.
oh, check it out. It's on Netflix, maybe still. But it's a great movie, and it's pretty much a what the hell is his name? Smith. Dude,
Kevin Smith.
Kevin Smith. Yeah, Kevin Smith take on the West Baptist Church.
Well, there's a documentary, I can't remember what it's called, and they go into they like interview them. They go into church and everything, and you get to see it for real. And honestly, I get 20 years, they'll be like nobody even remember them. They'll be gone. They're just they're not gonna last. They're not powerful. They don't have money. They're gonna go away. They can't sustain what they got with the hate.
Well, the money they have, didn't the patriarch, didn't he like have some patent or something? And
I don't know.
you know, he made a ton of dough, the original guy, and dumped it all into this church and this family, and you're right, they're running out of money.
Yeah. So when they go away, they'll just be a bunch of sad people that nobody will pay attention to anymore, and fuck them.
But see, but I mean, that goes to the whole what you guys were talking about a little earlier, where, you know, stuff like the First Amendment, that free speech clause is for the minority. It's for the people that, you know, are allowed to have a voice and aggrieve against the government, right? And this woman has agreements against the government, but she works for the government. And we're a secular nation. We like to call ourselves a Christian nation, and we're based from a Christian Judeo foundation, but we're not a Christian nation. Those dudes who wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and you can read all their writings, they went back and forth about it. The reason why they called God a creator, what I call God, because my creator may be different than what you believe is your creator. So they covered it as a big general, and they wanted to make a very secular nation.
As
and
they did with everything. The Second Amendment, the First Amendment, all of that, it was done by design, through their intelligence, they
Mhm.
knew it needed to be broad and sweeping in order to protect everybody, and even the people or religions or firearms for that matter that didn't exist at that time. They weren't idiots. They knew the world would change.
Yes, they did, and they were. It's amazing how intelligent some of these men were, and it's hard. I don't want to live under the fucking Taliban. I don't want to live under that chick's version of Christianity. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and like the
And she
Westboro
works for.
Baptist. Go ahead,
Yeah,
sorry.
but it's a little different because she works for the government, right? She is a representative as county clerk for the government, so she is able to not give out a marriage license. Now she went broader, right, to try and cover all her bases, which was okay, but it's still wrong because you work for the people.
And
Your
not only
job
that,
isn't to interpret the law, right? And I scream my fool head off at the liberals when they do it, right? And I scream at the conservatives when they do it. Why? Because I'm a libertarian, and you guys kind of covered that too when you had said, when you were talking about how, as long as people don't physically hurt somebody else or steal their property, right, or through fraud or whatever, if they're not hurting you, it's really none of your business. Like Stone said, whatever somebody does in their own bedroom is their business. I made it a little nicer, Stone.
Yeah, absolutely.
well, I mean, if the Westboro Baptist Church was like some kind of organized, like if they were like, I don't know, the KKK or something, then yeah, fucking let the federal government get involved and make sure, start investigating. But they're not. They're just some pathetic assholes with brightly colored signs. And
Right, but could you picture them running the government? I mean, what it would be like?
oh, I don't want to even know. That would.
Yeah, but that's what this chick is doing when she stands up and says,
Yeah.
now she has the right to do it. I'm not saying she doesn't. I
No,
disagree
actually,
with
she
that
doesn't.
right.
See, that's the thing. She doesn't have the right to do it. She has the right to say what she says, but she doesn't
right.
have the right to not do what she's not doing. 'Cause
Well, she
No.
has the right to not do it, and she also has the right to get arrested and put in jail like the judge did. The
alright,
judge
yeah.
looked at it and said, okay, lady, you stood up for your convictions. Welcome to an orange jumpsuit.
Okay, if you look at it that way, I guess technically she does have the right to go to jail, but
Yeah.
I have
Well,
the right.
you know what? Look, if your
Get in my
convictions
front yard and
make
fire
you
my
break the law, if your convictions make you break the law, then you have to be responsible for your actions because of those convictions,
No.
right?
Yeah.
There's plenty of laws I don't like and I break. And I understand that if I get caught breaking them, I'm going to have to pay society for that,
Oh,
whatever it is.
you live on a farm or something?
No, I'm not talking about laws against God. I'm talking about I break man's laws all the time.
I
Right.
know, being a smartass. Sorry.
No problem. I understand.
DB's not in here, so I have to pick up the slack for DB not being here.
But this woman, like I said, in my opinion, this is my opinion, but this woman had the right to stand up and on her convictions, and the government had the right to come down on her like a ton of fucking bricks. Right? Because we
Yeah.
are a nation of laws, and the law says, whether I like it or not, that gay marriage is legal. And I don't care, honestly, one way or the other, because it really doesn't affect me. I'm not gay.
And you said earlier, like the our founding fathers put the separation of church and state in there for a very, very good reason, and she's breaking that on the most basic level. She's breaking basically that. That's why she's going to jail right there in a nutshell. That and the law that was passed that she's also
Mm-hmm.
choosing to ignore.
And contempt. Right? She had.
Well,
she
I guess
had-
that's the actual
Oh,
charge, is
Yeah.
the
She's not going to
contempt
jail.
charge.
She's
But
not
it
going
has to be, right? Because she's had the redress of her grievances much faster and better than most people get, right? All the way up to where the Supreme Court just this week said, hey, look, we're not going to relook at this. We did already. So they
Right.
answered her question.
Yeah, I didn't mean that she's going to jail because violating the separation of church and state. I'm just saying they put that there because
Well,
at the
she's held in
time-
contempt over that decision of that, right? That, look,
Yeah.
the law is the law, and the state and the church are separate, and if you don't like that, then leave. right? You can't be fired because you're an elected official, but you can be held in contempt of court for not following the court order. And guess what you're going to do? Go to jail. And the judge talked to her because he was willing to fine her, right? But he knew that she wasn't going to pay a fine. She was like, screw you. I'm not even ready to pay lawyers for this thing, you know?
She'll be they're gonna put somebody new in her place, and then she'll be forgotten about.
Well, no, she's elected in. You know what? She can end up getting governorship out of this shit.
No, she's gone. They'll bounce her out of there quicker.
Okay, and then they'll bounce her out. But now she's a name, and she stood up to big government for Christian religion, right? So depending upon where she's at, if it's a very pro,
what state is she in
area,
anyway?
Kentucky, I think.
Yeah, so there's a good chance she might become, she might go from being county commissioner, to being governor. You know what I mean?
I would hope not, but.
Well, Kentucky's, you're talking south, man, deep south. So that's.
Yeah, but Moon, was it you that brought up? She's been married 4 times. The last divorce was due to her cheating on her husband. I don't know who the fuck would cheat on anybody.
Hey,
with her,
you know what? They loved Gingrich, right? How many times has that guy been? The same time that Clinton was getting a blowjob, so was Gingrich. Different offices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the hypocrisy of all religions and people's willingness because they like somebody or they agree with one thing they say to follow along with them is, really prevalent in the United States these days.
Right.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, the other thing I wanted to definitely touch on tonight was something that Yeager made. Yeager made a video entitled "Fuck the Police," which I thought
was it that? I thought it was
excellent.
I haven't seen it yet. Why don't you give me a gist?
Basically, and that was just a sarcastic title. It was basically saying how he, as a former law enforcement officer. And someone that's still very active in law enforcement community, he's appalled, shocked, and scared. Well, he didn't say scared, but I'm sure he's scared for current law enforcement, as we all are, given the state of affairs. But his whole thing was he was pretty adamant of how pissed off he is that our administration hasn't stood up and publicly admonished. Is that the right term? Is that the right word?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
admonished,
you're doing good.
the actions of these criminals that have targeted police officers and murdered police officers. But you'll get the President of the United States who's made precedents on certain numerous statements on how that black guy could have been his son. He could have looked like my son. Just when you got a president of our United States that more or less stands up, and I'm not going to split hairs on whether the guy was guilty or not, but he was a fucking criminal regardless. Regardless of at the time of his death, these people that they talked about, they were criminals. And when you got a president that stands up and basically stands up for these criminals and the actions of the officers and what's the word? Just like shit, I lost the word, but basically condemns the actions of officers, in those situations. But then when officers are being killed, you can't get up and take that podium and make a statement, to support your officers. It's ridiculous. It's a fucking embarrassment. And
that I can agree with. 1,000% is it's an embarrassment, because guess what? They're in the pay, the cops that are getting killed are in the pay of the king. The king should stand up and say something.
Exactly. And the whole point is, yes, and no one's going to disagree that there's some situations that happened in the past that officers should damn well be, you know, condemned for their actions. That officers definitely murdered someone, you know, but that's beside the point. What we're talking about here is innocent officers that are being killed strictly because they wear the uniform.
Yes, but that's going to happen, right? If you wear the uniform, if you take the pay of the king, you're going to be responsible for shit that the king pisses off, right? If you're a soldier and you're overseas stomping through a neighborhood in Fallujah, people are not going to shoot at people that ain't in uniform, right? You're in a uniform, you're a representative of the government. If they hate the government, you're the one they're coming after first.
I understand that, you know, and that's the whole, and that's the problem. That's what we talked about last night. I don't want to be redundant, but the whole thing about perpetuating the discontent of law enforcement and civilians. It's just a revolving door of, you know, of an officer that makes a bad decision, or not even a bad decision. Maybe some officer that just chooses to be a frickin' prick and does something stupid and gets the community, you know, pissed off and enraged, and rightfully so. But then, you know, that you've got to draw that line. You've got, you know, when you got people that go and start killing police officers unprovoked, then you've got officers that are going to be, again, on a heightened state, you know, and then it's just going to be a shitstorm the next time they, you know, make contact with someone. They're going to be edgy because of things that are happening.
Yeah, it's starting this dangerous perpetual motion machine, and
exactly.
The problem is you know, and here's the thing. Nobody learned since Rodney King, right? First of all, there's cameras fucking everywhere, right? And cops need to be civilians first. The problem is that when people put on uniforms, they take on the persona of the uniform, and they get into the cliquey team mentality and protecting their own, right? Look at it in high school football. You get two high schools in the same town, and there's an automatic rivalry just because of uniforms, just because one's named A and the other one's named B.
Right,
you know what I mean? Right. So that's part of the problem is they have to be part of the community. Why do we not have, in my small community, we actually have quite a few cops for the size of our town, right? We have like a total of like 30-something cops for 20,000 people, you know, not including county and state, just our little town cops. But they all live all over town, right? They all have kids in the school. They don't keep themselves separate from the people. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
well, and I think there's a lot more of that in those smaller communities where you still have the old school police officers that walk a beat and interact with the general public and have that personable interaction, you know, versus...
It's funny, the older ones, yes, the younger people, no.
No, exactly. Well, we talked about last night, the mentality of law enforcement nowadays is just that, to enforce the law. It's not to serve and protect like it should be.
I think the older ones, yes. I think the older ones, yes, and then there was like a time period where things got really bad in this country, and the older cops from that era, not so much. And now I see a split in the younger cops. Like I see some younger cops that are a little too gung-ho, and other ones that get it and are trying to do the right things like the older cops used to do. So I wouldn't say you can't throw all the younger cops under the bus.
Well, you can't throw, and that's the thing, is you can't throw any. I mean, this is where stereotypes and anything gets real picky because there's always the exception to the rule. And I know even in my town, we have one young super cop, right, who walks around like he's fucking, if he was in the military, still on patrol, right? I mean, literally the full tacked out, just different color, right?
Yeah.
And then you have another younger cop who's same general age, probably graduated around the same time, hired on around the same time, and she walks around with a vest on, but that's it.
Yeah.
Under her regular shirt, right? So she doesn't look like she's, while she's taking protection through the vest, she doesn't look like she's out there hunting, terrorists.
Right, right. Well, that's just the thing, and we talked about this last night as far as the militarization of police, and I said there's nothing wrong with having the items, the military armament available to law enforcement for situations that may,
arise,
may arise, may be needed. But the biggest difference is you could have that armament available and not have the mentality of a military. It's all dependent upon your the structure of your town, of your leadership, and it's just that if you've got a your superior officer, your chief, your sheriff, if they have the mentality of being a military force, then they're going to allow their deputies to dress in those BDU military type uniforms and have them adapt that mentality versus, like in our area, in our department, all of our you've got what they call traffic, a traffic division and a patrol division, and they're all uniforms, like you would think of a regular police uniform. They're in uniforms. They're not in these military get-ups that are always exposed by the media and pointed to as militarization of law enforcement. None of our officers contact people on general traffic stops or even on specific calls in anything other than a standard police uniform, And I think that's important.
Our cops still wear the Smokey the Bear hat, and you can't be all tactical with Smokey the Bear on.
Exactly, and I think that's important.
You know what I mean?
I think that's extremely important to keep that uniform, because I think it's almost human nature, like you said. Fucking mule. I couldn't think of your name. Shit. I think it's important, like you said. It's people do adapt to their clothing, in a sense. When you put on a suit and tie, it makes you feel good. You feel distinguished. You feel, better about yourself. You know what I mean? Versus being in a fucking ratty T-shirt and cut up. You know what I mean? It's the way you dress definitely has a psychological effect on your personality, and I think that the departments that allow their officers to dress in a military manner, that's definitely going to have a psychological effect on how they treat the people they come in contact with. And I think it's subconscious, even if they say, "Oh, well, no, we're still here to protect and serve." Well, bullshit. You can't. There's no way around a subconscious, alteration of your mentality based on those. You know what I mean? It's like it's something that you just can't get around. It's human nature.
Yeah, it really is. The get up makes the man, right? So when you see somebody looking like they're a construction worker, 9 times out of 10 you're going to go, they're a construction worker, and you're going to find out you're right. You see a guy in bright orange, right, with the little reflective tapes built into their shirt, and they're all dusty and dirty. I'll guarantee you they're out there doing something, building something or destroying something or putting a foundation for something or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and it's no different with. I know in Illinois, when you get pulled over by the state troopers as well, they come out looking like a trooper should look.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah, Georgia State Patrol, like you said, they have to wear the cover hat. You know, that's part of their. They don't approach a vehicle without their hat on.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, organized. It's a uniform.
Yeah, shoes are polished, right? Nice crease in the pants.
Absolutely.
In Illinois, it's a brown. Pretty sure it's a brown stripe on their pants. But I mean, I've been pulled over enough to notice.
Your comment earlier about the Smokey the Bear hat, I disagree completely.
Oh, what, you think you can look tactical in that hat?
You ever seen those fucking pictures of the guys in Spanish-American War? They all wore those things, freaking storming up San Juan Hill and all that shit.
Oh yeah, but if you look at their outfits, their uniforms weren't tactical. Well, maybe for the time.
There are thousands of drill sergeants out there that I would say would really disagree with you.
I'm sure they would.
And I would be scared. I'd be scared of that disagreement.
Okay, but I know. Whereas, if I saw a Marine Corps, drill sergeant and that, I would have to agree. But most state troopers, they switch to a ball cap when they want to go tactical.
No offense, but cops can't do. They don't do tactical very well. Sorry, cops. You don't do it right. You always look like chumps when you do it.
Well, I think there's no reason for it. I think
sometimes there are, right? Like when they were that cop that got shot over here in Illinois just the other day, right? In the area that they were looking for the perpetrators in, that tactical shit was handy because it's pretty wooded, kind of swampy, right? And they got to go looking for these guys. Now they more than likely, and me and the wife been laughing about it, not laughing, but talking about it, right? On how these guys are gone. They keep looking in the same area. No, this is Illinois. Somebody jumped in a car. They had a friend pick them up with a cell phone, whatever, right? They're gone out of the area. They may even live in the area, but they're not right there where they need to go hunting through the woods. But that first day, they did.
Right.
First day they needed to be out there looking all tactical, hunting through the brush.
There's a difference. Yeah, if you're on a specific team or tasked with a specific duty, well then you dress for that duty.
But that shit's in your trunk, too.
If you're an SRT unit or a SWAT unit, well then obviously, let's face it. Even us as civilians and gun guys, we like to fucking get tacticaled up to go shoot at the range.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I don't even do that shit, but But you have that shit. The thing is, like, you're a SRT team. You're not walking around in your you're not wearing your Kevlar to go get coffee. That shit's in your trunk.
Right, but street gang. But like when you take training, right? Say you go take a class from whoever, you're gonna wear your tactical shit, right?
I understand that, but training aside, unless you're like in a gang task force where you're doing something, or unless you're on duty for that particular task, if you're a patrol officer or a detective normally, and then SRT, like when times need, you don't need to wear that shit around. You just keep that shit.
Oh, well, are you talking just a standard bulletproof vest?
Oh no, bulletproof vest. Like, who is it that pointed out the cop that wore the one under, and then the other that wore like the fucking all the bells and whistles?
Oh, right.
Yeah, like no.
Well, and I tell you, if you guys,
I'm talking about load bearing, like
actual
equipment.
plates, yeah.
And that's the funny thing. That's the juxtaposition is I got one guy because they had to deal with me a couple of days ago, and one guy shows up. Right, and he's got his tactic gear on. He's all, he's short. He's kind of short too, which is funny because I'm tall. But so he's all puffing himself up, and then this chick comes over who's also about, like I said, about the same everything else other than gender and what they were wearing, right? Because she comes over, she has her badge out, regular button-down cop shirt, right? Pleated with the pockets or whatever, and her vest underneath, right? And her regular duty belt on, pants on, sneaker boots, whatever they wear these days. Nobody wears a shine pair of damn shoes anymore. But, and she's all just asking what's up, Not him. He has to look tactical and act the part. It's the aggressive part that clothes bring, where she's just there to find out what's going on. He's there to push his dominance over the situation.
It's like when you get out of your patrol car just to do something simple. You don't grab the shotgun or the rifle. You just get out of the patrol car with your duty pistol. Like if you need to use that shotgun or that rifle, it's there for you to utilize, unlock and grab if you need it. I feel like certain types of equipment for certain situations should be the same thing. It's in your trunk if you need it, or maybe in the fucking passenger seat next to you if you need it. You can grab it and you can go. But you don't need to like walk around town like. We have the same. I don't know what happened here, but all our cops used to have uniforms. Like they had a blue uniform with a dark blue stripe that ran down the leg of their pants, and they just looked like regular cops. Well, recently they changed them all. They all wear all black now, like BDUs with boots. Like they fucking look like 80s like fucking SAS fucking special forces guys now. It's kind of ridiculous like how, and they have so much shit. They have like chest carriers with shit everywhere and
But now this isn't your normal.
No, this is them. This is all of them.
You're saying normal like traffic officers.
They all wear black BDUs.
You're saying you get pulled over for a speeding ticket and someone's gonna walk up to you with a plate carrier on.
I haven't seen one of the old cop uniforms here in a long time. They may be out there still. I mean, they changed the cars too. The funny thing is, they made the cops.
Now see, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's the kind of department. That's the kind of department and the kind of thinking of whoever's in charge of that department that gives validity to the general population complaining about the militarization of police.
And our department has been investigated by DOJ, seriously investigated at least once, like to the point where not just an investigation on one incident, but an overall department investigation where DOJ came back with like, this is what you guys need to do different from now on. Like that's the kind of scrutiny that these guys came under.
Well, and good, because that's the problem. That's the proliferation of militarization when you have the mentality or the superior, like the upper.
Well,
what's the word? Like whoever's in charge. When they're the ones mandating that their police uniforms change and everybody looks like a fucking soldier, that's bullshit.
But even if, okay, let's say they do that, that's fine, but at least put some training in place. Put the training in place to just build understand, like put the training in place to make sure that kind of mentality doesn't happen. Like at one point, our police department had more taser uses than, I forgot what department they compared it to, but our department had more taser uses with less tasers and a smaller department than like some major U.S. cities.
Yeah, but see, I don't even think they need, it's not a matter of training, because that goes back to what I was saying. There's a psychological aspect to the way you dress that cannot be trained out of you.
Oh, I was using the taser thing as an example because obviously they weren't getting very good training with their tasers, and they were deploying them all the time. Like, if you mouthed off to a cop, you were really rolling the dice that you were going to get tased. It was insane. Like, they tased people to death here. Like, if you can believe that. I can think of one person off the top of my head, but I know it happened more than once. I got tased to death.
And see, that's where,
that's bad training.
It's bad training, right? No doubt. But that's where this crazy situation we're in with this mass media being able to instantly find out what's going on, even if it's the wrong information, right? Somebody gets tased to death. Well, what do you think that family is going to think about that cop?
Right.
And do they know the difference between cop A and cop B? Well, sometimes a lot of people, and I'll tell you,
or the
people
fact
don't care.
Or the fact that the guy had a fucking heart murmur, had already had 2 heart attacks previous to being tased, and the taser was just a small variable in the
I think
death.
I think the
Tasers are incredibly safe.
Yeah,
and
I think it's a
any
great tool.
any death that's caused by a taser, there's 99% of the time there's extenuating
Oh yeah.
Well, not just death,
circumstances.
but not just death. I'm meaning that a lot of the reason why there's, and it's the public perception, because there's really not more cops being shot than ever before, right? That's just not true when you go look at the statistics, right? But
Well,
we see it more. No, I'm telling you, Stone. I'm not. You do it
Statistics.
yourself.
Well, no, I've looked at the statistics and on the surface, yeah, but see the thing we're
But the
you're not
perception-
seeing is
the
the
perception,
outright targeted for no reason.
But it's
Like
not
the-
no reason. See, it could be we just don't know the reason, right? You understand?
Well, now the reason is because of the shit
It's
that's
not-
going on. The
That's
Black
part
Lives
of it.
Matter.
That's part of it, but it's not all of it. And how did the Black Lives Matter come about? Not just, okay, Michael Brown was a fucking criminal, no doubt. He was holding up a fucking gas station 2 minutes before, right, for blunts to be able to go
Right.
get high with, right?
Right.
No argument there, right? But the perceived situation in that town was that it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. That one piece of straw is not the heaviest piece of straw in the bunch. It's just the last that the camel can take.
Sure, absolutely.
I wasn't saying tasers are a bad thing. They're obviously a good
No,
tool.
no, I'm not
But-
even.
But there were where I'm saying the training is wrong is when they're deploying it constantly. Like people were getting tased right and left. It was like a joke. It was like Portland police tase first, ask questions later.
yeah, and it's a bad joke.
And
Right.
it's like the chokehold thing too. It's like maybe it's a great tool, but if you implement it poorly probably through bad training, you're gonna kill somebody.
Well, it's not bad. I don't want to say training because, well, I guess depending on your academy or what they go through, the training is pretty standardized amongst all police academies. It's not the training, it's the fucking people. It's
the
these
person in the
limp dick
uniform.
fucking Napoleon syndrome assholes
Oh yeah.
that
Well, it's the
get a-
perception, right? It's
that
the
get a badge and think they fucking are untouchable, indestructible. Don't And that's what's so frustrating, and see, we talked about this last night, is the fact that there's no other profession that gets crucified for the small percentage of the bad guys like law enforcement. You don't crucify all doctors for fucking up one surgery, or all
Yeah,
dentists for pulling
exactly.
the wrong tooth.
But
law
they also
enforcement
get
does.
called. But when one cop does something spectacular, all law enforcement gathers up and basks in the glory. So it's that double-edged sword, right? Now, if all cops were more, if police forces and police themselves were more transparent, right, and they didn't hide behind blue walls at times when they are doing wrong shit, and their departments cover up for them when they do wrong shit, right? If it was all exposed, more people would.
Yeah. Well, see, and that's this thing. There's no doubt that there's some departments, complete departments, that are just, the whole fucking department needs to be shut down, revamped, and
It's also a cultural
that's
thing.
very few and far between where you have an entire department that's crooked. It's
Wow.
more or less the small percentage of individual officers, and I think nowadays more than ever that you're not getting that band of brothers protect them at all cost bullshit.
That
just
depends. That really depends, like you said, on the department, right? So it depends
Well,
upon the department.
in a way, but it depends on individuals. Individuals now are
There ain't no new Serpico coming out of New York City, but my friend, I'm sorry.
There's
It's not
nothing. Yeah, I just don't. I
It's
guess
also-
it's relative to demographic, I guess, in a sense, because
It's a
we've got
cultural
cops
thing.
that turn in cops all the time. It's not this.
And the ones that the public see get eviscerated, right? I mean, any whistleblower. This environment is not good for whistleblowers. For that cop with integrity, that one that we try and hold up as the real standard, or what the standard should be, the man or woman that has the integrity to be able to be somebody who can arbitrarily, deal with shit on the street, but also be honest enough to tell the truth in a courtroom, right? You're hard pressed to find those, and the ones that do have been. I mean, now maybe you've seen different in Georgia than I've seen here in Illinois, but the ones that do, I see here in Illinois that stand up when wrong things are happening and they say something within the department, they get eviscerated. They get kicked out. It's not a good environment for whistleblowers in America right now.
I mean, you brought up Serpico. He got shot in the fucking face for doing what he did. To me, it's a cultural thing, and I mean, maybe hopefully a few years from now things will get better, and there'll be some feel good thing that happens, and people go back to looking at cops like heroes again. It's happened in the military. You look at the military as like post World War II, they were all heroes. Vietnam, they were all villains. And up until like 9/11, when Afghanistan and Iraq, they went back to
first Gulf War came back pretty good.
Yeah, it was just like all this shit was like, it ebbs and it flows, and unfortunately, I think it's controlled by and it can only take like one circumstance, one My Lai, or one fucking guy getting choked to death by some.
Well, look at 9/11, right? 9/11, the cops came out smelling like fucking roses.
Yeah.
But I have to say it depends on what political party plays it. Like the left had a lot to do with fuel with anti-cop. Now, Black Lives Matter.
Hold on. I don't think it's a political party. I think it's the media.
Well, it's not the media is mostly registered liberal. Okay, so where did Black Lives Matter? Who gets their support from?
Well, it's whoever's running the propaganda.
The mayor of New York. Did the mayor of New York not have the cops back when those 2 police officers got killed? And how he treated? Okay, how did President Barack Obama handle the police departments? He eviscerated, he villainified all of them. And then all of a sudden you have the left was saying, oh, it's racial profile, this includes racial injustice. And so what came out of that? Black Lives Matter. You fueled these young 18 to 24-year-olds from Cleveland to St. Louis to disrespect police officers. So you're not telling me that the Democrats and the people who speak for the ultra-left didn't have anything to do with fueling this?
No, because both sides do it. Both sides cover all the channels, every channel.
But no. It's not about fuel both. But come on, PBR Street. Okay, tell me, how does the left? Tell me, where has the? Tell me one left that has had the police officers' departments back.
I don't watch the big channels anymore because I'm sick. They both do it when I see it.
So where do you get your news from? Where do you get your information from then? If you don't watch the big 3, where do you read your information from?
I get Reuters, fucking.
Reuters? Reuters is the most far left
news
thing in the world.
Hold on, I was naming off a bunch. I was going to name off where I got my news.
Reuters? But I'm just saying Reuters is very far left.
Shit, dude, hold on. I was going to name. I get it from multiple sources because I don't go to one place to get my fucking news because biased. I avoid bias, and how I avoid it is by getting a bunch.
Reuters is not biased.
Well, you're misunderstanding him, and I think what he's trying to say is that while I get it from Reuters, but I get it from Breinhart. I get it from the Drudge Report, but I get it from the Drudge Retort. I get it from McClatchy, but I get it from AP. I listen to the Young Turks, but I don't listen to.
They're so far left. Everything you named was so far left. That
hold on a second. McClatchy's not far left. Breinhart's not far left. Drudge Report's not far left.
Breitbart's not far left, but.
Okay. But you're trying to understand. I look to the far left, I look to the middle, I look to the right, I look to the far right, I look to the north, I look to the far north, I look to the south, I look to the far south, I look to the southeast. The only place I don't look is northwest because I don't, or what is it? Yeah, the kid's name is Northwest. What's that? What's Kanye's kid's name?
Yeah, that's right. Southeast,
Southwest, Northwest, whatever. I don't look in that direction because the fucking kid's there, and I'm not into kids. So. But you know what I'm saying is to
Yeah,
get a better
yeah.
picture of anything, you have to look at all sides.
Well,
As a
and that's the
cop, you
problem.
know that too, right?
Oh, well, absolutely, and that's the thing. I'm not. No one's defending, and me definitely. I'm not defending the fact that they're fucking dirty cops out there. My
Mhm.
problem is that how the media exploits the very the things that happen. The media is all over it at the drop of a dime, ready to exploit and crucify law enforcement as a whole for the actions of a very few, and no other career field or no other you know
Well,
what I
because
said earlier is
because
done
the
like that.
cops. Right, you're right. That's true. Well, for the most part, right? You don't blame every miner when there's a mine collapse.
Exactly. You don't
Every
find
bus
every
driver when-
right. Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say there. So
Right.
that's the thing. That's what's so frustrating about being a law enforcement officer and seeing the shit that goes on and having to fucking to like
Answer for the bad.
constantly fucking defend yourself for some ass clown that decided to fucking shoot some thug ass punk for no reason. You know what I mean?
Right, but
It's so ridiculous. So ridiculous. And instead of the media, you know, at least showing a little unbiased reporting,
No, that's
they're
not a thing
they're
anymore.
all about selling the story, selling the sizzle, whatever is gonna fucking give them the most ratings and
No
the
matter-
most
yeah.
views.
And they do that no matter what side they fall on. They can fall on either side or either any political whatever, but the problem is they're still trying to sell advertising space, and they're not. You don't sell space if you don't. Yes, if you don't create controversy. And
Yeah.
that's the problem. That's why I try to get my news from a
Right.
multitude of sources so that I can form my own opinion, as people should. The problem is a lot of these people we're talking about, they prescribe to their flavor. They find their thing that shows the news that they like, that justifies their shitty opinion, and they
Right.
roll with just that.
Right.
They don't
and
go to
I,
other
I
sources.
respect you for that. Like, if you want to read both sides, that's very intelligent. I respect that, PBR Street Gang. You know I love you, buddy. There's much love. There's much love.
The other big thing that
Hey,
that I
you two
wish-
can now get married, right? At least in that town.
No, not
the
married,
other-
but much respect. I have very
Yeah,
much respect
the
for
other
Busting your chops,
the other-
Nick, that's all.
That's
the other
all right.
big thing that I wish we could get over as law enforcement is the fact of that I think there needs to be, you know, it should be a self-correcting problem, but instead it's a self-perpetuating cycle of you know, my dick's bigger than yours. You know,
Yeah.
it really is. You've got law enforcement officers out there that get so fucking offended when someone stands up for their rights or decides to mouth off
Or even just questions their opinion.
right in a even, you know, and I'm talking in a non-violent, non-confrontational manner. You as law enforcement have got to be able to de-escalate a situation and understand that it's just words. It doesn't mean shit. It's just some ass clown, you know, flapping his jaws at you to try to get a rise out of you or whatever his motivation or intention is. But the problem is you've got officers that really get butthurt about that shit, and then they escalate it to that next level. You know, that's got to change. That's got to change at its foundation before we're ever going to go anywhere and really start to solve the problem between law enforcement and the general public. The
Right,
other
the only
bigger
way to-
issue.
The only way you're going to get that to change, Stone, is to help other cops understand that when people are yelling at a cop like that, they're yelling at the uniform, right? They're yelling.
Well,
the cop is a
exactly.
representative of the king, right? So the king's the one
Exactly.
fucking with me. If you're just basically a robot in blue, right, which is technically what you are, right? When I'm yelling at you, I'm not yelling at you as a human being, even though I'm cussing your mom, right? I'm yelling at you as the representative of the government that's fucking with me.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, and there's gotta be a give and take with, when if you're if you're a fucking shitbag criminal that's getting the cops called on you, well then, hey, if you're fucking up and doing something wrong, expect to get fucked with. Expect to have the police there in your face, asking you questions, trying to figure out what's going on because you're a goddamn criminal. Now, on the flip side of that, there doesn't need to be this immediate guilty until proven innocent attitude that some law enforcement has, and I think that as time evolves and we learn, like I said, it's got to be a give and take, and it's definitely has to be given by the police officers than the suspect or the general public, because we should be held to a higher standard. As police officers, we should be the ones to understand that, hey, this guy, we need to be held to a higher standard.
Can I ask you a question, Stone?
Absolutely.
Okay, so have you ever dealt with professional criminals versus thugs, wannabes, whatever, right? Have you ever dealt with professional criminals?
Sure.
And do you notice that when you deal with because I don't know how to say this right.
You're talking like organized crime, like mobster kind of shit.
Whatever, anybody who does crime for a living, right?
Sure.
Not
Not
you
some
know what I'm saying?
fucking gangbanger slinging rock on the corner. Right.
Well, higher than that, right? Hopefully they advance to where when you get busted, you don't do anything to a cop other than shut your mouth and say, "Where do you want me to stand?" Right? Oh, I'm busted with, and you're under arrest. Okay, you caught me. That's the game, right?
Yeah.
That's the game. I try and get you not to catch me. You've caught me. I'm not gonna fight you. I'm not, it's not a bar brawl. It's shit like that. It's you caught me. Good enough. Let's go. Where do you want my hands? You want them in back? Okay. You want them in front? Okay. Where am I going? Where do you want me to stand?
But I'm gonna tell the police officer straight right now. There, sir. I'm not gonna put my hands.
Hold on. Let me finish the story here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hold on 1 second. My second part of that is I'm not a professional criminal anymore, right? So now when I talk to cops, I talk to them on a different level, right? Because I'm a citizen and I'm a taxpayer. We're not in the game anymore. Or I'm not in the game anymore. They still are, and they have to be the ones to understand who's in the game and not. Right? You can treat people in the game. If you're slinging rock and you're an asshole, you're going to get your head stomped, right? But if you're out there yelling at your neighbor because he's mowing your 6 inches into your yard, that's not a reason to stomp somebody.
Absolutely.
All I'm going to say is I'm not going to.
That's exactly what I meant. As far as, there's got to be an understanding by law enforcement to de-escalate a situation and judge it on what's in front of you instead of preconceived or predetermined ideas that you have in your head based on your experiences and your prejudice of.
Man, you're gonna be hard pressed for that.
I just wanted to say, I would tell the police officers, I'm not going to put my hands on you, and as long as you don't put your hands on me in any type of sexual manner, and we're all
unless you're female, right?
Yeah, that too.
And then I want you to put against me what I keep repeating.
Yeah, I have a friend. You guys ever seen that one scene? Was it Days of Thunder when the guy was drunk and he thought he was getting pulled over by real cops and he ended up getting manhandled by a stripper? That was one of my favorite scenes.
I think I think the only way you'll be able to get cops to do any law enforcement, any people in that type of situation to do what you're thinking and would like to see, would be it has to be a cyclical thing, right? Because when you're constantly in the mud and the muck, when you're constantly seeing people at a worst, you get jaded to shit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But see, and there's officers out there that do have the mind, the intelligence to separate those things. You know, and I said it before. You do get institutionalized in a sense of it. You know, it's human nature to profile. It's human nature to judge something on first appearances.
Mm-hmm.
That's, you know, regardless if you're law enforcement or not, that's human nature. That's survival of the fittest. That's your genetic instinct. So, you know, but as an experienced law enforcement officer, you've got to understand that not every situation you come up to warrants the type of response that you may be used to giving.
Exactly.
Well, and that brings up kind of the story of where, what's that, Moms Demand Action are saying that if you see someone open carrying, you should call the cops and kind of like exaggerate, saying, oh, and it's not just saying, hey, there's a guy with a gun in the holster, but saying, there's a guy with a gun, he's in the store, or whatever. And the problem is the cops are going to roll up with this mentality of, you know, shoot first, and they're all gung-ho, and that kind of gets to that mentality, even the military style.
Well,
or
don't get on that, because that has to do a lot with the
Well, no, he's got a good point though, Stone. I mean, remember that kid in Cleveland, right, who was in the Walmart?
Well,
and
that's what I was about to say.
That's where the juxtaposition. It was a lot.
Communication. It's communication, and see, that's something that I know. I think all departments work on constantly is the communication between your dispatcher and your patrol officer, because you're absolutely right.
I don't even know if you can blame. I don't know. I mean, you can blame the cops in that particular situation. That guy in Cleveland with the airsoft gun in the Walmart. You can blame it on everybody involved except that guy is to blame, right? He's fucking around with this gun in the Walmart like I've done 1,000 times. You've done whatever, right? Because it's out of the package, and you're like, oh shit, I get to play with it. Cool.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And but then that asshole, right, who nobody has talked about, and why this guy's never been charged, I don't know. But when you see that video, you see the asshole who called in the next aisle. And
Right.
he saw this guy talking on the phone, fiddling with it, and he just wanted to fuck with him, like one of the guys were saying on the panel, right? He just wanted to mess with him, so he called it in like it was a hot call, like this guy was waving it around, shooting at people, blah, 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 right?
Yeah, pointing it at kids, and
And the cops rolled up hot because of, who knows,
because of
maybe they had a bad day,
because of
whatever.
the information, right? And that's the
Well,
thing.
part of it. That's part of it, because they capped the guy long before he was like, you're in a Walmart, first of all. Second of all, that gun did have an orange tip. Third of all, you're in a Walmart, right? There's a lot of kids around. There's way too much shit to be shooting at people in, because bullets go through stuff, right? One of the 10 commandments of firearms, right? You got to know what you're shooting and what's behind it.
Yep.
You know? So everybody was wrong on that. But the main one who's culpable is that guy, that bearded clown who said he was an ex-Marine, turns out not.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah,
Turned out, got kicked out of boot camp.
Right, the one that fucking called it in the first place. You're absolutely right. And that's the kind of, and that's what I'm saying is you've gotta have officers that are intelligent enough to judge a situation on what's in front of them, and not what they've been conditioned to expect. That's
You
the
got a
biggest
great point there, because those videos showed that people were all looking around like, why are these cops all jacked up, man? What's going on that the cops are angry?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Otherwise, they were just doing their shopping.
Right, that's the thing. It's like you know, and I hate to use this, but because everybody's like, oh, that's a fucking cop out. That's a cop out. That's bullshit. But what I'm about to say is absolutely true. You'll never know what it's like to deal with a situation as a law enforcement unless you've been there.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that's a shitty excuse
Well, it's true
for
though. You know
bad
what?
situations, but it is. It's
You're not going to know what it's like to be
extremely
a
true.
fireman unless you're a fireman.
Right, exactly. And so when they question, when you have the media that questions the calls that law enforcement makes on a daily basis, you don't understand that.
Well,
The guy last week that did a routine traffic stop walked up to the side of the car, and before he could ask for the guy's license, was shot to death. So then, fast forward a week later, another officer from that same office makes a routine traffic stop. He's approaching the car. The driver lunges towards the glove box, and then you've got this officer spazzing out, pulling his gun and shooting. Why? Because of what happened a week previous to his partner, or to his friend in the same department, and all that's flashing through his head, and it's like, it's a split second decision you have to make of, what do you do?
Well, see, this is where our culture's kind of fucked up, because that man who ends up capping that guy reaching for his license and registration in his glove box because he thinks it's a gun, for all the reasons, and that would be the kind of thing where if you're open about it, right, people are going to go, holy shit, wow, okay, so I understand it, that sucks, maybe give the family $1 million or something, but it's really not that cop's fault, right? Because of the circumstances you've described. When they don't tell you the circumstances that you described, right, that the cop's dealing with his partner being shot, this guy was kind of fast, it's all on video if you want to watch it, right, and releasing the video quickly, win, lose, or draw, release it these days. This is not 20 years ago. This is not 30 years ago where cops could keep shit under control. You can't, and that's why I said since Rodney King, we the people are finally getting it, and the cops still ain't getting it. You're still seeing cops telling people not to film. That's just going to make more people film.
Yeah, and I don't agree with that either. I think all officers should be mic'd and videoed. I think it can't do anything but help everybody.
Well, yeah. Well, it's funny though, when I think about it, because at one time we used to think God was always watching us, right? You're a fallen Catholic like I am, Stone. We used to think God heard everything, right? Saw everything, was writing in the big book. That's why you had to go to confession every Saturday, so you can get rid of all that shit, right? I did this. I jerked off 15 times all week. No, today.
Whoa! Are you reading my mind? Are you reading my mind, sir? Mule?
But you know what I mean?
Yeah,
right?
I understand. I'm Catholic.
And now we're giving that same exact omnipresence to the damn state, right? Instead of being responsible for our own actions, now we have to understand that we are actually being watched all the time and being recorded.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But the things, I'll say this. This is where I come from. Like some of the cops that I get in the small town of Lakeview are guys who want to be in the big city, who want the adrenaline. And sometimes they get carried away thinking, because they get bored, because there's not a lot of crime that happens in the town. There's a lot of people are easygoing, okay? There's no reason for them to dress tactical. There's no reason for them to be all aggressive, okay? This is small town folk, people who, with some family values, church-going people. So you don't need to be like that.
Right? This is America, small town. We got some meth heads, too.
We've got some meth heads. I agree with that. But most of the time, if they want to be like that, you go to a big city and where there's, your MS-13, whatever. But there's a time and place for that stuff, So with me, I'll be the first to admit that there are some cops that are gung-ho and they don't think when they act. Okay, there are some out there, But at the same time, we all know, and we all demonstrate in this conversation, that there are some good police officers. However, our beef is how they're trained and how they react to things that don't need that type of force. And I get that.
Yeah.
Well, the scary thing is there is right now a narrative in the zeitgeist, right, of this anti-police thing. And Stone, you know me probably better than anybody on this panel, probably better than anybody. Well, is Moon Guns Moon Food?
Yeah.
Okay, so Moon knows me too. All right. But, I'm pretty anti-cop. I don't like cops. I don't like any authority, so let me just get it that way. Okay?
I don't like my
Cops-
parents.
And cops represent authority. You know what I mean? But they are that necessary, one of those necessary evils in a society, right?
Yeah.
You need the people who can arbitrarily make decisions for the best of not only the parties in between, but the society as a whole. We've lost a lot of that because they're not trained for that anymore. Like you said, being trained how to de-escalate a situation, how to be able to stop something from happening without cutting the baby in two, right?
Yeah.
And everything becomes this aggressive thing, and a lot of it is because you guys got to generate, your tax collectors now. They don't call it tax; they call it fines. But you're tax collectors now, so they do it for you guys. Got no choice but to do it for the money, right? And it feels like the world's against you. This is a scary ass time to be a cop for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are the representatives of the government, and people are not really happy with the government, and you're the closest representatives most people ever deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just want to add on to that is just, and as of now, I live in a college town, and most of them stop you and whatever, just so they can collect the fines and the money from the ticket, so they can add on. So.
Oh yeah, now that as far as that goes, take all the shit we've talked about out of the equation. Policing on its,
for the meaning of
is a definite money making organization. It's
it makes lots of money.
It's again, it's a necessary evil. There's certain
Well, let me ask
arbitrary speeding like if you're going 10 miles over the fucking speed limit, BFD, but it's that money generator. It's
it is.
Well, hey, Stone, I got another question for you as a cop, right? Because, like I said, we've been talking forever. So I've wondered, because there's an idea floating around that I'm rolling over in my brain too, is this idea of cops being like firemen and ambulances. You know what I'm saying? They only come when they're called. Instead of having cops out there, because they don't really, generating funds under the guise of preventing crime, right? If they only come out for being called for real crime.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Walmart got picked up by, Walmart got shoplifted. There's a shoplifter in Walmart. Their security department saw the shoplifter. They call you. You go to Walmart. You arrest shoplifter.
Right.
But you go from the station, not from out on Highway, 14 with your speed gun up or reading your email while you're doing. Because cops have let me go because now I'm old and gray and an old angry white guy, right? So they let me go. Why? Because they're like, he's speeding, but he's not reckless.
Yeah.
He's got a beer in his hand because his daughter just got married.
I'm not.
Well, depending on the department, you do have divisions of traffic and patrol where traffic officers are just that. They sit at a, designate. They're looking for speeders, for expired tags, for.
Right, but even patrol, even just wandering around until crime's committed in your area, or you going around and seeing what you can, gin up. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
If they just say, okay, instead of rolling around on patrol, foot patrol is one thing. That's being part of the community. That's a whole different ball game. I'm talking about these rolling cages.
Right.
And that's the biggest thing that's changed policing in the past, in my lifetime at least, was cops getting off the beat and into cars.
Mule, is that your picture? Is that the real you?
Oh yeah, that's the real me. I got 0 fucks to give to the whole world, so the internet's one of them.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that's you, or that's not just a picture you just downloaded from one of the Google galleries.
Nope. That's my shirt, my watch, my finger.
All right. Okay, man. I got you now, brother.
No, I think no, it's been a good chat, and like I said, hopefully, people may watch this in the future and just realize that it is a very small percentage of officers that are shitty, and
Yes.
and it's definitely I definitely feel like that now more than ever officers are less likely to cover for each other, um, at least in my area, and
Yeah.
I think that it's definitely, you know it's got to change. The more like-minded people we get, not only in law enforcement but in the community, and start to teach each other how it should be done, how it should be, how we need to be more, you know, accepting of differences in people, and accepting
Hmm.
of different life choices. As long, and like I said, 90% of the time, if you're being called out, it's for a reason. But it's that percentage of just general interaction that gives, that leads to a fucked up situation, and then shitty things happen. That's the part that needs to really change. And I feel like, in some aspects law enforcement's on the right path, but then I also feel like when situations happen like what's going on now, where officers are being targeted and murdered, that it kind of you like fucking two steps forward, three steps back kind of thing, because now everybody's on fucking height, like super high alert.
Right, but see,
And
I think this can be a great moment for the percentage of cops who are the good cops, right? Whatever you want to call the percentage, because I'm one of those, apple barrel guys, right?
yeah,
You got to
yeah,
be real careful, right? So, but this could be a great PR teaching moment if they do it right. They go start doing the community policing. They
yeah,
go start, and
absolutely.
the funny thing is, in Ferguson in particular, right? They are making those kind of changes, right? The town itself has gotten rid of an ass ton of warrants, which the cops are responsible for. It's not even like
Right.
who says they want
Yeah,
to go out and do them, but they have no
yeah,
choice in some matters, right?
yeah,
So when you
absolutely.
take that out of that, when you take that out of the equation, those money generating warrants that helped cause most of the stress that was really going on in Ferguson. Like I said, Michael Brown was nothing more than a fucking piece of straw, a shitty piece of straw at that.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you're right. I think this is a good opportunity to do that. But I think, and the whole catalyst of this conversation was the fact that our administration is not standing behind us. And I'm not saying stand up for us, because there's certain things that shouldn't be allowed and shouldn't be tolerated. And I agree that you don't want to say stand up for you in the sense of covering for you. Not that at all. I'm talking about having the the, the dignity and the balls as a representative of this United States of America, to address your citizenry and say, look, guys, enough is enough. We need to come together. You know,
Well,
not
no, because
only
they
as
want the simple fix. See, that's why they constantly go to the gun control, because they want the simple fix, because they want
yeah, right, yeah, because
they
that'll
have
solve everything.
no, it won't solve anything, but it'll solve the one problem they have. The
Yeah,
one problem they have is the American people are never going to be as compliant as the rest of the world because the American people are armed,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And they worry about that every single day.
yeah.
Every
I
single
would
day.
Well,
They worry about, yeah, the armed peasant, exactly.
yeah. Well, and as far as that goes, I tell you, from,
That's a lot bigger picture than what we're
yeah,
discussing here.
exactly. That's a whole different, because
For sure.
on the surface, I don't know a single law enforcement officer that's
Yeah,
ever concerned about a concealed carry holder a law-abiding citizen concealed carry holder being an issue or being a problem.
Well, they'll only become problems when you're kicking in the wrong door at night, right?
Yeah,
So-
and that's on the cops though.
And that's
on the cops.
That's a whole different discussion
But
too.
gentlemen, can I say one thing? I like to quote the great guy Bernard Shaw: "Liberty means responsibility. That is why most men dread of it."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's
Liberty
why people love
comes
being
with
slaves.
Yeah, because people hate, with our type of society, it's liberty, and that's why liberals have gun control, because they don't like responsibility. That's what appeals to the younger crowd. Younger people hate responsibility, and so with
Well,
liberty it comes responsibility. And that's why most men dread it.
Well, when you're responsible for your own actions, there it is right there in the nutshell. You are then responsible for your own actions. That's why you constantly see libertarians and even let's say the Second Amendment crowd constantly talking about, why don't we talk about the person and not the tool?
Right.
Because all anybody's bitching about is an inanimate object. And this is where this kid that did the selfie fucking the photo shoot, right?
Yeah.
know?
Dude. Yeah.
But I mean, they're trying to blame the
Darwinism
gun.
at its best.
Yeah, exactly. Survival of the fittest. I mean, come on, man. But they're trying to blame the gun on this, like that Glock went off in the kid's hand because his trigger wasn't on his finger wasn't on the trigger.
Sure.
Well, adversity introduces us to ourselves.
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to end it here. I think it's been a fantastic chat. I appreciate everybody tuning in out there. Mule, I appreciate you jumping on tonight.
Hey, thanks for sending me the invite, Stone.
Absolutely, man.
Thanks,
Real quick,
Stone.
do
I appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. Do a quick giveaway for Gun Channels. As you guys know, if you check out gunchannels.com, go to gunchannels.com/DPG Daily Patch Giveaway. G-Webs has been giving away patches now for a couple of months, and so every night after the chat or during the chat, we give away a patch to those people that are participating. And Catch Bay, I know you're like in Sweden or something, so let's see if we can send you a patch to Sweden.
Hey, Stone Guy, I just can't wait until this thing hits the 20-year mark, so I can say I've been on this chat for 20 years now. I haven't got one.
There you
I can't wait to say that.
So Catch Bay, he knows who he is. You win the patch tonight.
Congratulations, Catch Bay.
If we can send it to Sweden or wherever you're from. Forgive me if I'm got the wrong country.
It's somewhere over there.
Anyway, guys, I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
I'll have a beer for you, Stone Guy.